In 1995, W.A.S.P released Still Not Black Enough, an album that often flies under the radar but marks one of the most personal chapters in Blackie Lawless's career. Originally intended as a solo record, it became the emotional follow-up to The Crimson Idol, carrying the same introspective tone and confessional storytelling. The album blends dark, melodic songwriting with a raw, stripped-back production style that stands apart from the band's earliest shock rock era. Lyrically, it deals with grief, identity, and the aftermath of fame. Themes Blackie had never explored this openly before. Even though it didn't get the same commercial spotlight, Still Not Black Enough remains a crucial piece of the W.A.S.P timeline, showing the evolution of the band's sound and the depth of Blackie's writing during the mid-90s. The album KFD, otherwise known as, was released in 1997. This wasn't just an album, it was a declaration of war. The mid-90s belonged to Marilyn Manson, shock rock had a new kin, industrial metal was everywhere, and Blackie Lawless, the original shock rock outlaw, wasn't impressed. His response was simple: you think you're dark, you think you're dangerous, try this. And KFD is one of the most extreme albums W.A.S.P has ever created. Industrial, violent, chaotic, unhinged. It was Blackie's attempt to outshock the shock rockers who had taken the spotlight. The album's themes of domination, control, and psychological warfare pushed W.A.S.P into their darkest era. It alienated some fans, whilst it fascinated others. But it proved one thing: Blackie Lawless was still capable of reinventing himself in the most brutal ways imaginable. This darkness was also captured in the 1998 release, Double Live Assassins, a massive double-disc live album capturing the raw, industrial fury of the KFD tour. Then, in 1999, came Hell Dorado, and it was a deliberate swing back to the 80s sleaze metal. Loud, crude, unapologetic. A reminder that W.A.S.P could still party as hard as they preach. The 2000s saw a very creative era for W.A.S.P, with a string of albums being released, both being live and studio albums. This also included their most emotional release in 2002 on the back of the 9/11 attacks. But first, in 2000, The Stim was released, recorded during a global live stream. This was years ahead of its time. It was chaotic, it was raw, and it was a snapshot of a band embracing the digital future before anyone else. Here it is, W.A.S.P, Unholy Terror, released in April of 2001. All songs are written and composed by Blackie Lawless, and it really shows the adult orientation that he's heading towards. The songs are about politics, religion, societal hypocrisy, and also is the last album to feature Chris Holmes on guitar. Chris and Blackie just were having too much tension at this point. There was arguments about publishing rights, and Chris moved on after this album. Then, in 2002, came Dying for the World, and it was written in the shadow of the 9/11 attacks. It was a somber, emotional record filled with grief, anger, and spiritual reflection. It was soon followed in 2004 with the two albums, The Neon God Part 1 and Part 2. These were two rock operas continuing the conceptual tradition of the Crimson Idol. A story of manipulation, power, and the cost of fame. Then, in 2007, it was the year of The Dominator, a politically charged album exploring war, power, and morality. This was soon followed in 2009 by the release of Babylon. It's a biblical-themed record inspired by the Book of Revelation and is still one of the favourites for many W.A.S.P fans. Then, in 2015, Golgotha was released. It's a spiritual, emotional, and musically powerful album, and one that is considered to be the best release from any modern era W.A.S.P records. In 2018 saw the release of Re-Idolized. It was a full recording of the previously released Crimson Idol album. It was also paired with a long-awaited film. And then in 2022, Blackie announced the 40th anniversary tour. For the first time in decades, W.A.S.P performed Animal live again. Given Blackie's songwriting ability, in the 1990s, Doc Neeson of the great Australian band The Angels was sent to LA to write with Blackie for a potential Angels album. The session never became a full record, but the collaboration remains a fascinating footnote. A meeting of two theatrical, intense frontmen from opposite sides of the world. If you haven't heard any of the Angels stuff, do yourself a favour and get it. The modern W.A.S.P lineup is the longest running and most stable in the band's history. Of course, we have Blackie Lawless, but we also have Mike Dutta, who's been in the band for over 30 years. Doug Blair has also been in the band for nearly 20 years. And Aquelas Priester, he's been there almost a decade. The lineup has toured the world relentlessly and is considered by many fans to be the tightest and most professional version of W.A.S.P to ever hit the stage. From shock rock outlaws to conceptual storytellers, from PMRC villains to spiritual poets, from sleaze metal to industrial chaos. W.A.S.P has never stopped evolving. They were bigger in the UK before America caught on. They are also loved passionately by their fans in Australia. They were hated by parents and worshipped by teenagers. They were controversial, chaotic, and constantly changing. But through it all, one thing has remained. Blackie Lawless has never stopped fighting for his vision. And 4 decades later, W.A.S.P still stands, louder, wiser, and more powerful than ever.